Hi everyone, I'm Holly Webb and I wanted to talk to you about my new book series which is called Museum Kittens. The first book, The Midnight Visitor, is being published on April the 2nd, which is this week, which is really exciting. I also wanted, hopefully, to show you some of my cats. I only managed to get one cat to come and join in this video, and I had to bribe her to do it. She's had dreamies to get her to come and join in. This is Star, who, as you can see, is a very beautiful tabby cat who thinks that being videoed is the worst thing possible and is trying to make a getaway. She is very helpful to me as a writer. I don't usually sit at a desk to do my writing. I sit in this armchair with my laptop, and usually I have Star or one or two of my other cats sitting around me as well, which is really helpful for when I'm writing about cats. Lots of people are always asking me why I tend to write so much about animals, and the answer is because I love animals. I always have. I've owned lots of different pets. When I was growing up, we had 2 dogs, 1 cat, I think 16 gerbils, a mouse and several hamsters, although not obviously all at the same time. But I love writing about animals because so many of my pets have given me amazing stories about different adventures, and we seem to have, as a family, managed to own an awful lot of different quite adventurous animals. But the story for Museum Kittens wasn't actually inspired by any of my own animals. It came from a visit I made a few years ago to Russia. My books are translated into Russian, and I was lucky enough to go and visit St. Petersburg, where there is an amazing museum called the Hermitage, which actually used to be a palace. And in the Hermitage Museum, there are, as well as all the incredible artefacts and treasures, there are also about 50 cats. And they're known as the Hermitage Cats. They're there to protect all the artworks from mice and rats, and they live in the basements. I heard about this when I was there in St. Petersburg, and actually a child in one of my book events asked me if I would ever write a book about the Hermitage Cats, and it seemed like such a great idea that I thought I would really love to. This book was a present from my Russian publishers, and it has pictures of the different artworks and artefacts in the Hermitage Museum, but also beautiful pictures of the real cats who live there as well. So that was really exciting. And then while I was thinking about it, I discovered that as well as there being cats at the Hermitage, there had also been cats at the British Museum in London as well. So this is Mike, who's one of the most famous of the British Museum cats. This photo was taken probably in about between 1910 and 1920. Mike actually arrived at the British Museum in 1909 in the middle of a stormy night, and he arrived carried in the mouth of another cat called Black Jack. Mike was just a tiny little tabby kitten, and Black Jack dropped him at the feet of the keeper of Egyptian antiquities, which I think is a brilliant story for a museum cat. And in a minute, I'm going to read you parts of the first of the Museum Kittens books, The Midnight Visitor, and you'll see how Mike and Black Jack inspired the story. So, this is the first Museum Kittens book. They are amazingly illustrated by Sarah Lodge. I have loved so much having the chance to work with Sarah and see her illustrations and her interpretation of the characters. It's one of the best things about being an author, actually, that you get to see an illustrator's interpretation of your words. It's just really exciting. So, I'm going to read you Chapter 2 of The Midnight Visitor. Apologies for the jingling sounds in the background. That's Star, who's decided that she's actually going to still try and take part in this video. So, Chapter 2. The museum's cellar storerooms went on a very long way underground. Even the kitten's grandfather, the fearsome white cat Ivan, hadn't explored them all. They were full of boxes and chests and trunks of ancient museum bits that almost everyone had forgotten about. The cats lived in the cellars at the very front of the building, with a spiral staircase leading up to the small door on the terrace. There was a sloping tunnel that led up into the Egyptian gallery too, and opened out behind a very large and musty-smelling mummy case, as well as lots of other passages and chutes and hideaways that the cats used to get around. Tasha, Bianca and Boris were asleep on an old tapestry full of holes, their tummies full of fish, with their mother's smoke curled lovingly around them. It was the dark of the night, and the shower that had spattered down on the terrace that afternoon had turned into a storm. The wind rattled through the old chimneys and air ducts with shrill little whines and angry growls, and rain was lashing against the walls. Even safe underground, the kittens stirred and shifted uneasily in their sleep. Tasha woke with a squeal as something banged loudly on the door at the top of the spiral staircase. The noise seemed to echo around the cellar, and her fur prickled with fear. What was happening? That door should be shut tight. There were cats out on duty in the museum, of course, prowling around the priceless objects in the galleries upstairs. They were on watch for mice and rats, or even burglars. But the cat guards knew to slide silently in and out of their den. This was an intruder. "Stay here," Smoke hissed, her green eyes glinting fiercely at her children in the soft light from the doorway. "I'll be back soon." Then she shot away, joining the tide of tabby and white and ginger fur, surging out of the sleeping quarters towards that strange, suspicious noise. The kittens stayed huddled together on the tapestry, feeling the warmth of their mother's body die away. Tasha's tail was swishing anxiously from side to side. "I want to see what's happening." "Ma said to stay," Bianca mewed. "We could just look round the door," suggested Boris, standing up. "That wouldn't do any harm, would it?" Tasha jumped up with an eager nod. Bianca shuffled her paws worriedly and then sprang down from the tapestry after Tasha and Boris. She didn't want to be left behind. All three kittens peered round the door frame, trying to see further up the passage. In the dim light of the lamps, they could just make out the spiral staircase, with shadowy cats standing sentinel all the way up the steps. They were as still as statues, but Tasha could hear the soft hiss of their breathing. They couldn't see the door at the top. "I want to know what it was." Tasha's tail was flicking back and forth now, and her ears were flattened. "It's important, I know it is." "No," Bianca moaned, but the other two were already creeping along the passage. Tasha started to weave her way up the staircase between the cats. There were a few hisses of annoyance as her brother and sister followed, but no one stopped the three kittens as they pattered towards their mother and grandfather, who were standing together a few steps from the top. "I thought you told them to stay in the den," old Ivan murmured to Smoke, his one eye narrowing, and she sighed. "I did. I should have known you naughty kittens wouldn't listen. Now stay by me, you three, and don't move." Then Smoke turned back to watching the heavy wooden door at the top of the stairs. The two cats on guard duty were pulling back the heavy bolts with their teeth. Tasha shivered and pressed tight against her mother as the door opened a crack and the wind battered and shrieked against the dark timbers. All the cats on the stairs hissed, lowering their heads into the wind, feeling it lick their fur on end and tie their tails in knots. The door swung fully open, and a haze of damp air rushed in. Outside, the cats could see the rain lashing the flagstones on the terrace, each heavy drop striking up a little fountain as it landed. It was midnight black out there. Even the cats' night eyes were blind. The two cat guards took a cautious step forward, and one of them bellowed, "Who goes there?" "Identify yourself," the other guard roared, not to be outdone. There was a faint thickening of the darkness outside the door, and then another cat appeared, a skinny old cat who looked even skinnier with the rain flattening his coat over his bones. His mackerel tabby stripes seemed to melt into the shadows around the doorway. Something about him made the two guards fall back, pressing themselves respectfully against the doorframe to let him pass. The cats on the stairs peered forward, staring at the skinny old tabby and waiting for him to speak. But he didn't. He couldn't, Tasha and the others realized, because there was something in his mouth, a little saggy something, all black and bedraggled. The old cat padded carefully down the steps until he reached Smoke and her kittens and stood in front of her. Then he leaned down and laid the soggy ball of fur at her feet. He nodded slowly, then turned round, pacing away up the stairs, and disappeared out into the rain-soaked night, still silent. On the stairs, the wet ball of dark fur wriggled and sneezed and sat up, staring at Smoke and the kittens with emerald eyes. "I'm Peter," squeaked the small black kitten. gazing nervously around at the rows and rows of cats. Hello! And that's just the beginning of the story, because Peter has to learn how to fit in and become a proper museum kitten, and he finds it very difficult at the beginning. So thank you for watching this video and letting me talk to you about Museum Kittens. I'm really excited about it, and I really hope that you enjoy it too. Thanks!